Welcome to our GOLDINVEST deep dive today with David O'Neill from American West, and I'm happy to have you here with us to really get to the bottom of why the Storm corporate discovery is so special and why it's potentially lending itself to be a company maker. Dave, I'll invite you to lead us through and I'll ask questions going along.
Thank you, Sven. And look, just a reminder, Storm is a very early stage project, but there's a significant amount of mineralization and drilling that's been discovered and I guess was used for discovery in the past. So there's a lot of information that this presentation is drawn off. I'll also point out also that Storm's one of three very exciting projects that American West Metals has. The other two are in Utah. That's been West Desert and Copper Warrior down in Utah in the USA. And I encourage people to go and have a look at our website and past announcements to see some information on that if they're interested. But look, the Storm is where we're focused at the moment. We commenced drilling about 3 weeks ago. Geophysics is also underway. We've managed to get there a lot earlier this season. People might appreciate that given it's the Arctic, there are some seasons, but we managed to start in early March this year, and we'll run the exploration program all the way out to hopefully September, which gives us a fairly significant, exploration season. So Storm is, for those who don't understand Storm, it's very well located despite being in the Arctic. So it's in the Arctic desert, which is on Somerset Island. So we only get about 1 meter of snow per annum, which sounds surprising, but literally there's no vegetation. There's very little wildlife. It's very well accessed by deep water ports, being Aston Bay on the Northwest Passage there, which is a very regular sea lift route, which goes to Cambridge Bay and a few other places like Resolute, which is the main community in the north. And people might be surprised that this is also an ex-mining area. So Polaris zinc and lead mine was mined for 30 years or so back in the 80s. Very high grade zinc with lead and silver. And just off the map to the right is the Nunavut lead and zinc mine. So two very large world-class mines have been operating in this area for a very long time. So it's a very well-known area. I'd akin the area to maybe an early Mount Isa. Storm is a copper discovery in the area, and Seal, we also own a deposit, a zinc silver deposit called Seal in the area, which is kind of small at this point, but it's still open in every direction. It's very high grade. It looks like it's associated to the Polaris zinc lead mine there, so which is about 120 kilometers away. So it's all the same geological system, if you will. Early stage Mount Isa, we think. We've got a very dominant land package here. We've got over 4,000 square meters. We're the only landholder essentially on Somerset Island North that has about 120 kilometers of strike within that project area, which is the Storm, as it currently stands, only covers about 5 kilometers of strike, so lots more to explore, and I'll talk about some of the upside in that shortly. Like I said, it's highly accessible, so there's ships come into Aston Bay. We're only 25 kilometers from the coast. We have a full camp on site, 35-man camp, generators. We essentially just fly into our airstrip and then turn it on and off we go to work. So very well located. American West Metals also has the option to earn 80% of this project via exploration expenditure, and we're probably about midway along that expenditure at the moment. So very exciting for us and very exciting for our partners, Aston Bay Holdings, who've been fantastic. They've got a lot of experience in the area. They've been up there for the last 10 years or so, and they've done a lot of the groundwork and the good exploration work that we base the current work off. So just in the background there, to point things out, that's a ship from NEAS, which is one of the supply ships that comes in. So if you can imagine, they've got a lot of cranes and barges and tugboats, and you don't actually need a port to get supplies into to Storm and also get concentrate out. So the ship comes into the bay, it unloads the barge beaches itself, a loader then loads it up, and then they crane everything back onto the ship and then off it goes. So you don't need port facilities in this part of the world if you've got a deep water port. and it's highly accessible, and they do about 56 routes per every year up there. So yeah, very well accessed. Look, Storm, and we're not going to talk about seal. We're not working on seal at the moment. Certainly copper is a key thematic at the moment in the market. We love copper. It's always been a very robust metal. There's going to be shortages, and look, you know, there's only so much you can do up there as well, given budgets and time as well. So look, Storm is certainly the focus for us. In the past, there's always been the thought that how does Storm sit into the geological scheme of things? It's not a porphyry. It's a very unique high-grade system at surface, but there's always been thought that maybe, look, what's the actual source? If it's like Mount Isa, then it's likely to have stratiform or sedimentary copper deposits that may be sort of producing, you know, the feeder for a lot of the near-surface copper. So in the past, approximately 4 zones of high-grade copper have been identified, and that's about over 15 square kilometers, so a very big area. Some of those intercepts are exceptional. So, you know, we drilled last year, we drilled over 40 meters at 4% copper. That was following up intersections such as 110 meters at 2.5% copper, 56 at 3. So you can sort of see that there's that, given that scale of sulfide, that there's always been an interest about, you know, how big could this thing be? Because like I mentioned before, it's always been known to be in a couple of little systems, not little, but individual systems. So really, part of the exploration we're doing is actually fleshing that out and saying, well, what really does exist at surface? Now, part of last year's program, we did some geophysics, which showed that there was a couple of EM anomalies at depth. There's some interesting gravity anomalies there as well. And so we decided to drill one drill hole at depth, just drill edge of the anomaly where it comes close to surface and see what we found. You know, as statistics would have it, we drilled one hole and we intersected over 100 meters of stratiform style copper and zinc and pyrite mineralization. So, you know, statistical fluke and 1 in a million to drill the only bit of mineralization at depth. But what it did show is some key things, and that's, I'll talk to in a minute. But it looks like one thing I didn't mention is, and I'll talk to in the next slide, is that Storm is sort of situated on a horst and graben type feature where there's been a lot of movement, block movement. A lot of the high-grade mineralization sits on these faults near the surface, and then, you know, we've drilled next to one of the faults and got this deeper mineralization. So we strongly believe that this is evidence of a very major system. So we'll be doing more exploration this year to sort of prove that up.
And currently, if I may say, you are just drilling the 4,100 North zone. And I think it's important to point out on this map that you showed that this happens to be close to surface. It looks small on the map, but actually it is not small. I think it's a kilometer long and 400 meters wide so far. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. And look, and that's always been one of the struggles with Storm, because it covers 15 square kilometers. You put it on a map like this and it looks small, but it's certainly not. You can see that the scale bar here. So you're right. So just briefly on my comments before, you can see these large faults through here, which represents a large, essentially the Storm graben. A lot of these, the purple and red is where drill holes have intersected +1 and +2% copper. So you can see the 4, 5, these aren't really named, but there's mineralization in these holes as well. There's about 5 or 6 zones that have been picked out. This zone here, these are subvertical, this mineralization along the fault, but this one's flat lying, and you can see it's about 1 kilometer long, so it's not small in any measure. It's about 400 meters across, and it's got a bunch of holes in it. So out of all the holes here, we've drilled 32 holes have actually intersected copper. And again, speaking to the potential scale of this, the average mineralized thickness is about 24 meters, and the average grade is over 2% copper. So even if you, I guess, you know, imagine what that kind would be, you can see that there is a good grade and thickness equation here. So for us, it was important. We see immediate line of sight to resources here, given these kind of statistics. And so the focus for us at the start is to really come in and drill out this 4100 zone, because as you can see, it's a kilometre long, 400 metres wide. You could, by drilling the middle of this, yes, you take some risk, because if it's not there, then you seriously can, I guess, limit the scale potential here. But look, we decided to come and infill drill this, because this will be a fantastic place to add significant tons quite quickly. We drilled a lot of holes into this last year, not a lot, only 8 holes into this, and all of them hit mineralization. And that's pretty well delineated this prospect over about 250 meters. So there's a number of zones now starting to be highlighted where we have the potential for resources. So this is...
And I think it's shown in this image as well, but I think it's really besides the grade and the thickness, what also is special here is, worth pointing out, is that it's coming either to surface directly or is very close to surface, like in the 4100 north zone.
That's right. And that's significant for a number of reasons. Obviously, you think of open pit copper mines, they rarely go above 1%. You've got the African mines, obviously, which are the higher grade. You've got Kamoa-Katula, and you've also got, obviously, Matea down in Botswana there, owned by Sandfire, which we're using as a fairly close analogue potentially for this. That's about 30 million tonnes of 1% copper. But you can see from the drilling we have it to date, we're getting anything from 1 to 3% copper. There's I guess a statistical higher average that we're getting a lot of 1.5 to 2.5% copper material. So we're anticipating this to be around 1.5 to 2% copper, but certainly the drilling we've done to date and we announced this week has certainly given us a lot more confidence that there is significant resources here, because you can see the lighter grey holes, they're the historical holes. You can see some of these intersections, fantastic. This is all fairly close to surface, so open pit depths. The 2 other zones actually stick out of the ground where we drilled last year. But you can see here that
fairly close means 50, 60 meters. That's where the copper starts.
That's right. And there's parts where this comes to within 25 meters of surface. So look at the other, like I said, the other prospects stick out of the ground, but this is a very flat line. This is almost like a coal seam like geometry, which has the ability, because of its spatial dimensions, to add significant, if it was to all hang together, would add significant copper tons. So look, we're very encouraged by the drilling to date. We've only drilled the 4 holes that we've released there, but look, the drilling is proceeding at a cracking pace. You can see here that we're getting very thick intersections of strong sulfides within broader intersections of weaker sulfides, and that's really defined. How do we know it's copper? We use the XRF gun to any visual sulfides that we see. We use the XRF gun to confirm that it has copper in it. So that really assists in our logging and the confidence we have that we are going to get copper. You can see literally we're drilling next to these zones. You can probably imagine what these may contain in terms of copper, given if you had a similar amount of sulfide in each hole. But what it does show is that this thing is continuous over 250 meters in a lateral sense. These are exactly the same scale. We drilled to the east of this section. You can see here as well, we're getting similar thicknesses and similar continuity. So that's fantastic for our resource confidence here, because if any of these holes particularly if this hole was to come up dead, you can imagine that this thing would start to get potty and it start to put some holes in your resource and things like that. But look, certainly this is proof of concept that, we strongly believe that is a big flat-lying system that is continuous, and certainly the first holes are showing that, which is fantastic. So
you just released the first 4 holes. Assays are pending. Just remind us, how many drill holes are you planning just on this zone?
So this zone will have around 15 to 18 drill holes, depending on, obviously talking to the resource geologists if they need a bit more information here and there, to certainly get indicated and inferred resource during this year. And then we'll move down to the 2750 and the 2200 zones, which just to refresh, is to do the first drilling we've ever done on this zone, which has got some, again, fantastic intersections, but also do some near surface drilling on this one. Very short holes, very quick and easy to do, just to get some near surface information, because this zone sticks out of the ground. So, and then we go into the exploration side of things. So, look,
I think at this point it's important to remind that this is not post discovery. It's a pre-resource, or it's leading to a resource. This drilling is really geared towards building a resource towards the fall of this year.
It is, and that's right. And people might say, well, why do you find these exciting? You expect to get copper there. Well, you don't until you drill it. And any resource geologist will tell you, don't drill it because you'll wreck it. So there's a fair bit of risk behind these holes, because it probably takes more bravery, I guess, to drill exploration holes, because everyone expects them to be not successful. But if you do drill within a resource, you want to make sure that copper's there, because you can quickly put holes in things. So look, we've got 4 out of 4 holes have hit significant copper. So to me, that's telling us something. Are we, is it the technical work? Well, maybe there's copper everywhere and we're just putting holes into everything. So look, I think this is early days, of course. We've still got a lot more holes to go in this zone, but it's certainly showing that the ore bodies are robust, they're continuous, close to surface, and and we're getting a feel for the tenor of the ore body being in that 1.5 to 2.5% copper range. So look, and when you get these kind of thicknesses of intersections, you can see this one here, the total mineralization is over 68 meters. It's quite easy to add tons quite quickly. You don't need to cover a lot of lateral area to get at these thicknesses to get these significant increase in resource tons. So it's important for us to do this resource work, I think, for 2 reasons. I think, one, it starts to flesh out the potential scale of Storm, but also it'll put an underline in our valuation. You look at Sandfire, the 30 million tons of 1% copper, just under 1% copper. Mateo, for an example, you could argue that's probably worth $1 billion, given the value of Sandfire. They've got Mats and Mateo together there. So there's nothing to be sneezed at. And I think, if we can get this, significant resource here, remembering this is early stage and this thing will grow, then it will underline our valuation significantly. So there's 2 reasons. So,
And the reason why you're referring to Sandfire is that those 30 million tons are at 1% are open pit, an open pit project. Okay,
that's right. And you need to compare apples with apples. We could talk about other VMS style deposits that have copper in the 1 to 2% range, but they've usually got zinc, lead, silver, gold, and things with them. Again, porphyries, big tons, low grade. Mostly low grade kind of thing. So, it's best to talk about comparatives, because it makes people understand what they could actually be, the scale of these things as well.
Yeah. And once more, I'd like to remind our viewers that what we're seeing here is really just referring to that small little horizon on the initial image, and there's probably it comes from a source that's the theory.
Yes, that's right. And let me just cut to talk about your the scale. So it might be to talk about the near surface material at the moment. So this is the 4100 zone we're drilling now. You can see those other 4 or 5 zones here within the Storm Graben. To the east, so that's 2 kilometers, so about 8 to 10 kilometers to the east, we have some drill holes and a lot of geochemistry that has a lot of copper sticking out of the ground. So again, that talks to that regional scale. And even more interesting, 70 kilometers to the south, if you can imagine. So a long way along this actual stratigraphy curves to the south, we have the Tempest prospect, and this has got over 30% copper sticking out of the ground. So massive chalcocite sticking out in a 200 meter long gossan. So to remind, gossan is essentially weathered copper sulfides that is weathered, and it looks to copper oxides essentially that sticks out of the ground. So essentially it's mineralization exposed at surface. So we have 2 very high grade anomalies along this. that's 70 kilometers to the south. So we'll be doing some exploration on this. So after we do this resource work up at 4100, etc., we'll be moving the EM crew and the drill rig down here because we want to test this, because, you know, success in this part of the world, sure, it's 70 kilometers south. It might not go into a mining scenario straight away, but it will show the potential scale of storm, which we believe is significant, and it's a regional scale position. So that's to quickly talk about scale. But there's another thing we need to talk about quickly in the mining sense. So again, while we're focusing on this near surface material, because we've shown that we did some test work last. Look, firstly, let me break it down. The mineralization is very simple. So it's chalcocite, bornite, chalcopyrite within dolomite. So dolomite's an altered limestone. Essentially, it's a limestone calcium carbonate. So very simple, and that's hypogene. It looks like it's been remobilized and come from somewhere. And this plays to the bigger picture, which I'll talk to soon. But when we saw this material, a few of our team has worked with beneficiation technology before, ore sorting, dense media separation, and a few other bits and pieces. Very simple bits of kit, very low cost and low footprint, and cheap to operate. So we decided to crush some of the storm core, which is 4 meters at 4% copper. So on the higher grade side, but certainly it had some much finer grade particles inside it. We crushed it to about 10 to 25 mils, and we put it through a full scale ore sorter, and we managed to get nothing else, no further processing. We had this assayed, and we got 53% copper. So that's taking it from a 4% product to a 53% product with ore sorting. So that really was a penny drop moment for us. That was, the cost of DSO type operations in the tens of millions, in fact, maybe about 10 to 20, as opposed to if you have a large scale concentrator, copper concentrator, which you make a 30 to 35% product, could cost you excess of 250 million. So this is a step change in being a low cost, very high margin mining potential. The fact that we've done it on this bit of core from the 4100 zone, like I said, it was a penny drop moment. We're now doing test work on material we drilled at the 2750 zone last year, which was, I think it was 57 meters at about 2% copper. So lower grade, but a nice big thick intersection that sticks out of the ground. So with that, we want to generate a flow sheet and essentially do some economic study and scoping feasibility study work behind it to essentially cost up what this kind of operation would look like. And these things aren't small. They could do up to 1 million tons per annum. Optimized correctly, you can have them in sequence, so you could do 1 million and 1 million tons per annum essentially, and get this fantastic product. So that's potentially one of the higher grade DSO copper products globally. So we'll stand above certainly our peers. To be honest, you could probably name them on less than one hand. Less than one hand's no hands, but I think there's about two or three DSO type, claimed DSO type operations globally, which is fantastic. So the beauty of this thing as well is that, one, it's very low footprint, very low operating costs. It's a very small team to operate it. We imagine this, particularly the projects stick out of the ground, it's like a quarry or a road-based type operation where you're really just skimming the surface off, separating the material and sending it via the ship to market. So we're doing some studies as well about what the smelters might take. So part of our DSO work will be taking it to that final product and then going to talking to smelters and saying, look, this is the spec of the material. Would you take it? So the feasibility work also getting that grade up. If we can get it to 60 to 70% copper, it's obviously less material to move and things like that. So this is very exciting. So this has the potential to monetize all of those near surface projects that we were talking about. So that's why we're focused on the resource. That's why we're focused on getting, like I said, I guess a line underneath the scale of this thing.
Is there also technology involved in terms of optical, for example, selection, or is it?
Yes. Sorry, Daniel. These do optical. This one in particular, the two things we use, the two sensors, was 3D laser and X-ray.
Okay.
So the beauty of that is that, you know, dust is not an issue. So you don't need water to wash the thing down to make it squeaky clean. So optical. So we don't need optics here. The difference between the ore and waste is 2 to 1 in terms of density. So even simple, you know, dense media separation would work in this instance as well. So look, and we'll look at a range of things. Whatever the cheapest and most effective and efficient beneficiation technique, we'll go down that pathway.
And all of this collective information, DSO testing, resource building, all of that will be included in a scoping study that you are planning to release in the fall of this year, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. We're doing a couple of things in parallel. So obviously the resource and then the exploration work's happening at the moment. Also behind the scenes, we're doing the resource work from a geological and modeling sense in the background. We're also doing this DSO/beneficiation study work in the background, really front-end loading it, because we want to be prepared that as soon as we can deliver the resource, we can also deliver financial numbers and a, you know, a clear pathway of developing this thing as well. Because I think being agile, being quick to markets is a key. Given the reasonably benign environmental conditions on site, having no trees, no vegetation, no animals, etc. The low footprint, we're hoping that, you know, the permitting side of things should go fairly smoothly. And in that regard, we're actually starting an environmental baseline study this year. So we'll have a full-time weather station data recording. We're having animal and fauna sort of surveys on site, very robust, and that'll give us you know, a baseline environmental piece to put towards this feasibility study. So all of those things, yep, the drill holes are exciting, and that's the bread and butter of the, you know, what the market wants. But at the same time, we're making sure that we have all this other information continuing at the same time, so we're well prepared at the back end of the drilling.
Well, that's really impressive. I think it's driving home the message. This is a project that lends itself very much to the financial capabilities of a junior company, because you have a shallow, then flat-lying potential high-grade copper resource that is only in the context of a starter scenario with the potential to even produce a DSO, which really out of 1,000 companies, there's only, as you say, a handful or less that have those benefits.
That's right. And you think about companies that have benefited from a, let's say, a DSO, and let's just say simple beneficiation methodology. Again, using Samphire as an example, obviously the De Groot was a fantastic ore body, very good sulfide, copper sulfide, mostly chalcopyrite, but fantastic grades, and VMS based in Western Australia. But they quickly identified a chalcocite blanket that sat over the top of the ore body that was about 20 to 30% copper, and they could actually send that straight to China and get full market price for it. And look, they made over $360 million from processing that material, and it wasn't a huge amount. Look, people would have to go back to their news releases in 2011-12 to see exactly what the metrics were, but in terms of scale, but it's we're certainly going to have a bigger volume of that material. But what that did is set them up for the rest of the mining. So it paid for their mine, got them, you know, paid for the mine to get down and ready and at the ore face. And so there is benefits to this. And look at them now; they're a $3 billion company, and you know, I think you do need that X factor, particularly as a junior. You know, access to capital is difficult. You need to, on one hand, progress your exploration and do this work, which costs money, of course, but you also want to maximize every dollar you spend, which is, you know, is helped by having extremely simple or very high grade or exposed to surface. So I think we're in a good position. We're going to progress obviously with the work, and I think there's also the upside that we'll talk to now as well, which is the bigger picture. And can come later, but look, there's certainly some work we're going to do this year to certainly progress the geological knowledge on this. So just to remind everyone, we drilled one hole last year, and this is kind of what we've got, which is chalcopyrite within a very porous carbonate. So this looks like the African style copper deposit strata bound, where you have the copper sulfides, I guess, grading out from an initial core of chalcocite out to the fringes having pyrite. And so everything we saw in this drill hole lends us to believe that we are on the edge of a system. You can see in this image here that the large red banana-shaped worm under the 4100 zone is actually a gravity high. You can see that there's another one between these two faults here, and the basic sedimentary copper model is very low temperature and low pressures fluids that come up faults. They're very similar to a petroleum style model where you have holes in the rocks, and we have actually bitumen and petroleum in the rocks, and when the copper fluids interact with those, they drop out the sulfides, as you see here. So everything we've seen is suggesting that we are potentially getting these copper deposits at depth that sit between and along these faults, which is the main source of plumbing for these things. A lot of the geophysics supports that, and we're very excited to we're now doing another more detailed gravity survey over the whole project area. We're doing more EM, and we'll be doing more diamond drilling into some of those targets, which will follow the RC drilling. So we'll probably come back in the summer in a month or so and start a couple of diamond holes to really test this geological model.
Yeah, okay. I think we could probably talk on for quite some time still. I find it simply fascinating to think that we have, as a junior, you have to, as a junior company, to focus on the, let's say, near-term potential. At the same time, I think it's important to remember that there might be a much bigger picture, like you point out with that, let's say, orange color there. That obviously the copper that you're finding high grade is coming from a source, and your current interpretation would be that this is sediment hosted, like in an African style, and could, as such, really extend for multiple kilometers. So there's a lot of upside to be had if we had the funds to drill it. But obviously your hope is to create a DSO scenario that could lead to an early on cash flow that would then self-fund the rest of the exploration.
Yeah, and I think 100%. I mean, our focus as a company is capital. Obviously, given being a junior, very tight markets, uncertainty with things going on in certain parts of the world. So we need to make sure every dollar counts, every drill hole meter counts. But we will continue some of this because I think, we do have investors that want the big picture. It may bring others in to help do that while we focus on the DSO. So there's always a potential for opening things up in that regard. But look, certainly, I mean, we don't have to do it all overnight. That's the other thing. No. The key to us is adding value. How do you add value as a junior in the short term? And for me personally, and I'm open to people's opinion on this, is that I think if we can underline a significant near surface resource, robust resource at Storm, and then show a very clear pathway to monetizing that through a simple mining operation, open pit mining operation, that would be a significant value driver for us. Surely one hole into 100 meters of copper at depth would also be a significant value driver, but like I said, you probably only got so many bullets you want to fire at that at this point in time, but we certainly do want to do it. So we want to progress the science, but also progress the operational side of things as well. So there's a fine balance, and what that balance ends up looking like at the end of the year, we'll find out. But
as I said at the beginning, I think this is, to me at least, has the earmarks of a potential company maker. with that starter project and with the bigger picture then coming behind it, I would even, not be surprised if that drew the attention of some major companies, copper companies, because it has politically ticks the box. It's safe. Environmentally, it looks like it's benign. There's not a lot of wildlife around and everything. So and it has 4,000 square kilometers. It's got that huge size, which we're really literally only scratching the surface. So I think it's to me it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing more news, the news flow, and also news flow from the other projects you're pursuing.
Thanks
Sven. So much.
Yeah, thank you. Always. Well, I just look, we haven't been known for put out a lot of news flow, and we'll try and keep investors up to date as much as we can.